Repairing this vintage rug, braided rug, is such a work of art and reminds me just about the restoration process. If you've watched any of my videos for any length of time, you know just how much I find it meaningful to repair what is old and what has memories, what has value, rather than throwing it away. So this particular rug is actually from my father's family cottage up in Maine, and it's been a property that's been in the family for about 60 years. I don't know if these particular rugs have been there that entire time, but these are the rugs I remember as a child there. And so when we were visiting this past summer, I took it upon myself to make sure that they got some TLC, a little bit of mending. As you can see, putting a braided rug back together again is a relatively simple task if you're going to hand stitch it. Just continually going back and forth between the sides, very similar to how you would put it together. My earliest memories of sewing, or at least some of them, were making a braided rug as probably a 9 or 10-year-old from old t-shirt scraps. You could consider what I'm doing a form of whip stitch. I think it is slightly different in that as I cross over from one braid to the next, I also do a little bit of a back stitch, just because if the thread were to break, I don't want the entire seam to come out, so that acts as a little bit of reinforcement. And the thread that I'm using right now actually isn't ideal for a braided rug. I would have preferred using maybe a nylon thread that I could use for my slip covers, but what I had on hand at the time was just a regular weight Gutermann thread that is not that durable for something like this, so I actually used 4 strands at a time, just because I did want that added durability. And then knotted the end of the threads and then just start stitching. It's a slow process, and one of the things that I remember as a 10-year-old or so when I did it is just making sure that when you're doing a braided rug, everything has to lay flat, because if it doesn't, you can get a little bit of a shape to the rug, which isn't necessarily what you want. You don't want it to look cupped or bent out of shape. What would happen is, if you don't evenly have the layers laid out, then it can kind of pucker around the edges. So as I'm recording this, perhaps you hear a little bit of background noise. I am a working homeschool mom, so definitely I fit in work as my kids are out doing other activities. So currently I'm working on editing this video while my one is fishing in the rain with a friend. So I'm enjoying that view as I'm teaching you how to repair your braided rugs, which hopefully you have some in your house that need some tender, loving care. And next time that you see one, you'll think, oh, I can do that, rather than running out to buy a new one. In this section that I'm working on right now, you'll notice that there's 2 strands of the braid that have actually fallen apart. So in order to tackle that, I just worked with one at a time. So the inner strand first. And there are some portions of the braided rug that I'm going to have to trim off, which you'll see a little bit later, because they were compromised. So if the fabric is compromised, then like beyond repair, I will trim that off a little bit, rather than trying to make the whole thing work. It is on a case-to-case basis, so really examining that. But there was some significant fray in one piece of this. If you take a look there where the scissors are laying, that's a piece that has too much fray that I am actually going to have to cut out of the rug, because I'm not able to save that without like wrapping that piece in a lot of extra thread, which I'm not even sure how that would look. So before tackling that part, I'm just going to go around and make sure that all of the rug is fixed up until that point. So it's really on this one edge of the rug that the whole end is kind of damaged excessively, is where I'm going to have to do that extra trimming. But I'm going to stitch all the way up until that point and then trim it off. As I come up to this spot where the fray is, I'm just going to go ahead and trim off the edge. So I took the trim right at where the fray started, and then just gently kind of laid that piece, that raw edge, so to speak, over the back of the rug. And then just started binding it. I just kept sewing and sewing, hoping that it would tack down all the loose pieces. If I was home, I perhaps could use a piece like a fray check or something like that. Or there might be other methods to repairing this that I just am not as familiar with. But the main thing is that you want to keep it from falling apart, because obviously you've interrupted the braid, the way it was originally intended. And so at that raw edge where you cut, it's very easy that could start a new fray if it's not completely tacked down firmly, so that, you know, as people are walking on the rug, maybe that would start to pull out. So just try and do enough stitching there so that it holds for a long time. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other corner that has this same fray, and just tuck it under. So what that means is that one end of the rug will only have one row of red band compared to the other side of the rug that they'll have 2 rows. So I hope this gives you enough insight into how to mend or repair a braided rug that you might have. This is the first of this type that I've done in a long time, but I always just remember, like, once you learn how to sew, once you have the sewing skills, there's so many unlimited things that you can do to repair and mend those textiles that you have in your home, so that you're creating a more sustainable lifestyle. And even in terms of family budget, reminding ourselves that everything that we repair means that we're less likely to want to go out and buy something new. I think that there's a little bit to be said about our mentality of just thinking that the next thing, the next shiny object, or that we need something else for our homes, or even in this case, a family cottage. So like, there's nothing wrong with having something that's older and repairing it. In fact, it really is something that is such a life skill that will benefit you for the future. And to see for your kids to see you making those memories and holding on to them, and not throwing things away immediately, but really wanting to preserve something like this that is a family piece, or just taking care of those items that you have in your home. Thank you for watching. You can shop tutorials and classes on my website, naomifeda.net. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, may God sow his love into your heart today.